I can.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. It is now 3:25. Please find your way to your breakouts. They will begin promptly at 3:30. Please find your way to your breakout rooms. Thank you. All right, folks. All right, folks, it's that time. Please find your way to your breakouts. All breakouts are beginning momentarily. Please find your way to your breakouts. Thank you. Okay, that's the last announcement. All right, for anybody who's sitting in this room, right up here, please. Sorry. We would like to ask you to please move up to this area in the front. We've got some workshops going on, so we'd like everybody to be at these tables right up front, please. Thank you. Oh, good job. You guys are, that warms my heart that you're actually moving. Good job. Most people don't listen.
Is there a clicker? Go. 1 minute. Okay, thank you. I was told to wait 1 minute, so I will. I was told to wait 1 minute, so I will. I know, I'll try. I clicked it. Is that good? Okay, great. Well, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jill Corbin. I'm Deputy Director of Destination Stewardship with the Colorado Tourism Office. Thank you all for being here to join us in the first session, part one of part two that we have at this conference to go over our Destination Stewardship Strategic Planning Initiative. Essentially, I told Chris with Solimar International that we are going to have a captive audience at GovCon, and so I wanted to take this time to connect with you all and to hear from you and to learn more about your insights and perspectives from what's going on around the state when it comes to destination stewardship, and to learn a little bit more about what the CTO is doing in this arena as well. So I'm Jill. This is Chris Seek, CEO of Solimar International. The CTO is contracted with Solimar International to develop our statewide strategic plan for destination stewardship, as well as 8 regional plans and a glossary of terms, which you'll hear many times. A little bit about the nuts and bolts of how this came about. Through COVID, through recovery, the Colorado Tourism Office was fortunate enough to get some additional funding from the state local fiscal recovery funds that came through OEDIT, specifically for destination stewardship. This was the first time that the CTO has ever had a dedicated budget specifically for destination stewardship. So this is something I have been advocating for and pursuing for over 2 years now. So I'm just thrilled that we have the funds, we're getting the projects underway, and we're just thrilled to be able to partner with all of you on this great work, because we think it's really important. And so the nuts and bolts of it, as I mentioned, are the statewide plan, the regional plans. It's a 12-month process that we are working through. A little bit about kind of what we're talking about when we talk about destination stewardship within the state of Colorado. You know, a big part of this plan and an emphasis of something that I really wanted to see created was a glossary of terms, because in my various conversations about destination stewardship over the course of the last 2 or 3 years with our industry partners, some of them scratch their head, well, what destination stewardship? What do you mean? You know, we know what stewardship is, but what do you mean when you say destination stewardship? And so us coming together, creating those definitions together, because there's strength and alignment when we're all speaking the same language as well. But really, it's about taking a collaborative approach to address and enhance concerns, issues, opportunities from tourism that impacts residents' quality of life, the visitor experience, our natural and cultural resources, looking at all the things that tourism brings to the state of Colorado, and also looking at those potential negative impacts and understanding that we have a very big role that we need to take as the tourism industry to try to mitigate any type of negative impact that is brought upon by travel and tourism, whether that's on our natural lands, on our communities, on residents' quality of life, on communities' sense of place, and things like that. The other big piece of it is that we understand that for the tourism industry, this is a relatively newer concept, especially in the United States. When you look abroad, it is not. It's tried and true. It's kind of been happening in many different countries around the world. But when we look at the US, it is a relatively new approach, especially for a historical destination marketing organization. And so to move into that management and stewardship role, we're still kind of figuring things out and understanding what that means for the state of Colorado. And so we're looking to our partners who are already well ahead of us as the state. You know, we've got great destinations out there who have been acting as stewards for many, many years. And not to mention all of our outdoor rec partners and our land management partners that have been wearing this hat for decades. And so our goal with the CTO's work is to align with those efforts, not to try to cross wires or anything like that. We want to align with the work that's already underway around the state or that's in the works so that the tourism industry can just support it and so that we can come to the table and say, this is how we know we can act as stewards and we can pull those levers for what the tourism industry is great at and what we're experts at, whether that's messaging or management or any of those things that we do so well. How can we help be better stewards of all the things that we love so dear in all of our destinations around the state? So to do this, we can't do it alone, as I mentioned, and we know that this process in and of itself as the strategic planning initiative needs to be highly collaborative, both with our partners and those agencies and organizations that are already doing the stewardship work. But we also wanted to go a little bit further than that and create a formalized council that could help direct us and guide us in this work. So about a year ago, we created a Destination Stewardship Council that's comprised of 27 thought leaders, industry experts, tourism stakeholders from around the state, including Colorado's first gentleman, Marlon Reese, sits on that council. So we're just thrilled to have this participation and guidance from these really fantastic leaders. So they're helping us as we move through all of this work as well. And they're going to be serving as advisors both for this strategic planning process, but also for some other big projects that are yet to come with this destination stewardship budget that we have. The next big one will be a research project and report. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn it over to Chris and the Solimar team, but we were just thrilled to be able to work with Solimar International and their team. You know, we had to go out to solicitation for this work, and one of the biggest strengths of their proposal from the Solimar team was their expert group of Colorado-based facilitators who we've worked with for many of whom we've worked with for many years. They're fantastic. They're super dedicated to Colorado's communities and destinations and to all the experiences and assets that we have here that we all love so much. So it was a slam dunk for us at the CTO to be able to work with Solimar International and their extended Colorado team, and we're just thrilled that they're here today, and we can't wait to see the outputs of all this work. So no pressure, everybody. But yeah, without further ado, here's Christy.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, Jill. All right. Okay, yeah, well, thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here. As Jill mentioned, I'm Chris, the CEO of Solimar International. We spent the last 20 years dedicated to the idea that tourism can make a difference in communities and be a really strong tool for protecting our natural and cultural resources. So we had the chance to put together a team. I just wanted to ask our facilitators, if they don't mind, you guys stand up for real quick. We've got a group here from all over the state that have been working with us, that many of you should know. And they're actually going to be helping us here today, because this session, we're going to do two parts. You guys can sit down. We're going to start off and we're going to give you just a summary of the strategic plan, the initiative, where we are, what we've learned, and then we're going to ask you to kind of give us some feedback, specifically related to how can CTO and how can the destination organizations help with this kind of goal of making sure that we're guiding tourism in the right way in the state. So with that, let me go ahead and just give a quick summary of the process. This is a 12-month process. We began back in June, and we finished our first phase, which was focused on stakeholder outreach. We're now in the middle of the investigation and listening. I should say we're almost finished this phase. We've had some great conversations and really learned a lot in this process. But just to go back, the way we approached how we would tackle this project, we wanted to make sure that we really were creating a large tent and bringing as many people as possible into this to help us develop this plan. And so we focused on our traditional tourism players, our traditional tourism partners from our destination organizations and CTO and industry associations, but also our other destination stewards, our other, those that are working at different state agencies and looking at federal agencies, our tribal governments, Main Street organizations, NGOs, bringing them into the conversation. So as Jill pointed out, they're already doing fantastic work, but what is the role of the tourism industry? What can we do to help support those efforts? So as we started this process, we involved a lot of people to help us identify what are the destination stewardship priorities? What are the things that we need to try to tackle with this stewardship plan? We use these 7 categories as a way to just help identify these priorities, and through that process, we identified over 63 different destination stewardship priorities. Now what we're trying to do is really get a little bit deeper to understand with these issues. It's easy to say traffic and congestion is a challenge for our communities, but what is actually causing this? Who's working on addressing this issue? What can we learn from other destinations? What solutions do we need to recommend in this plan to tackle these problems? And then finally, we also want to know, what does destination stewardship success look like? What is our end goal here? And so we've been asking everyone this question. We're going to ask you guys to help us answer this question. We've also got an artist in our booth who's going to help us kind of illustrate what is a vision for destination stewardship success across the state. We've had some fantastic workshops. We've finished 10 of the 16 that we have scheduled. We're doing 2 in each region, so we have the 8 travel regions, using this opportunity to help raise awareness about destination stewardship, but also give local partners a chance to showcase what they're already doing. Because we know that, again, there's some fantastic work being done across the state. And so this was down in Alamosa, where not only are we presenting and sharing information, we're asking the participants to help us prioritize these issues. There's 63 different issues that have been identified, but every community is different, is unique, has its own challenges. So we're asking them to help us prioritize those issues in their community and discuss and really understand what are the solutions? What do we need to do to address these challenges? Because at the end of the day, a strategic plan, we need to be able to make sure we have actionable strategies that we can put into this plan that are actually going to get implemented. It's great to say that tourism will protect our resources, but how are we going to do that? What are we going to do differently than what we did yesterday? And that's what we're trying to tackle with this plan. So what did we learn during these listening sessions? Like I said, we've done the workshops. We've also done about 100 of the 200 interviews. I've had some fantastic conversations with many of you in this room, and we heard some great things. I mean, first of all, we know how important tourism is to the economy of Colorado. There's no question about that. We know this is important for jobs. It's also important for tax revenue. And we also know that it's particularly important for some of our rural communities. Our rural communities particularly are a lot of them are shifting now to more outdoor recreation, and so the tourism economy is extremely important for them as well. We also know that the reason why visitors come to Colorado is because your amazing nature and landscapes. But it's also your recreation opportunities and all the wonderful things there are to do, your wildlife, your cultural heritage, but also your arts and entertainment as well is an important driver for tourism to the state. And of course, the communities. I've had a chance to travel around the state, and I really fallen in love with some of the small communities. I actually was out in Leadville and really enjoyed sitting there, and I was at a coffee shop, and I was just listening to the visitors just talk about how impressed they were with the town and walking up and down Main Street. And again, just kind of showing you how important it is and how the visitors really respond and love the communities that make the state so special. But we also heard from many people that visitors are also the problem. How they behave in destinations, whether it's how they try to interact with wildlife or getting that perfect selfie photo, or not staying on the trail and not respecting some of the rules that are put in place for certain places, leaving trash behind at public lands and campsites. Fire dangers from starting fires. We were at a wonderful resort, I'm not going to name it, but we were sitting there and having a nice campfire. I was with guests from all over from Denver that were out visiting the area. But it came time to it's time to leave. How do we put the fire out? Who puts the fire out? Is it our responsibility? Is it the hotel's responsibility? So just again, a missed opportunity there just to kind of make sure that visitors are doing their part to not cause any problems. We also heard over and over again from every community in the workshops that traffic and congestion and just this feeling of overcrowding is starting to become a problem in many communities. And so, again, not saying that tourism can solve all these problems, but what can we do to do that? We also heard about the importance of interpreting all of Colorado's heritage. There's a lot of different narratives, especially with Latinos and African Americans and Native Americans as well. How do we make sure those stories are told? And of course, we have groups like museums and History Colorado that are doing some great work around this. But how do we make sure that the tourism industry is driving visitors to these places so they can learn from their visit as well? We're also seeing some fantastic efforts to manage tourism and to deal with this overcrowding issue by creating timed entry systems or reservation systems, which is great, and we're starting to see this in different places. But what happens if the visitor arrives and doesn't know this? What happens when they show up? And we were looking at some of the comments at places like the Rocky Mountain National Park, and they didn't make the reservation, didn't know they needed it, and they got there, and of course, their vacation was ruined in the ways that they described that. So how do we better inform visitors that when they're coming to Colorado, that you might need to take some steps in advance to prepare for that? We're also seeing some great work being done around accessibility in outdoor recreation and communities. We had a chance to join the Destination Stewardship Council and CTO earlier on Tuesday this week, where we had a chance to go to Boulder, and one of the members, Topher there, is doing some great work in Boulder where he's making the outdoor recreation accessible. And we all got in wheelchairs and saw some of the challenges that folks that face, and how do we as communities and public lands try to make this more accessible. We're also learning that, traffic and congestion is referenced a lot as a problem, but why is it that everyone who comes to Colorado thinks that they have to rent a car, right? That's just the mindset. We have to rent cars in order to discover and enjoy this wonderful state. But then when we talk to folks at CDOT, we learn about programs like the Pegasus and the Bustang. How do we help make sure that visitors know that there's alternatives to getting to our destinations, and then once they get to a destination, how they can use local transportation to get around that destination as well? We've also seen some great work from CTO in looking at diversity in marketing and looking at making sure that the state is seen as a welcoming for all different types of people. But there's still some work to be done in this space as well, especially as getting more people of color into the tourism industry, especially in leadership positions as well. And then, of course, workforce. We heard over and over again the challenges with workforce, whether it's attracting and retaining talents to work where the jobs are. But one of the biggest challenges there is related to workforce housing and availability, that affordability. And again, there's some great work being done across the state to tackle this, but each workshop has brought this up as an issue. And so how can we learn from what's being done? What can the tourism industry do to champion some of these ideas as well? So as I mentioned, we've been having interviews, and this has been one of the processes, is to try to make sure that we're not just looking at what the tourism industry can do on its own, but learning and looking at how to build on the work that's already being done. So we've had some really good conversations, of course, with folks like from the Department of Natural Resources, CPW, GOCO, but also transportation, the Energy Office, History Colorado, the Commission of Indian Affairs. But then inside of OEDIT, we heard about all the other offices and departments that are working on things like creative industries and outdoor recreation, or helping entrepreneurs get started. How do we make sure that communities are aware of these resources, and that if you in a role of destination organization, how you can point your partners to these resources as well. And of course, we're also talking to and learning from what some of the federal government partners are doing in the tribal governments and county governments as well. So again, building on and learning from some of the issues that are already in place. Now, when we started off this process, one of the goals was to look at creating regional action teams, because we wanted to create these regional plans, and we wanted to have a way to organize those that are in the tourism industry with those that are protecting the resources so that we could all be working together. But one thing we learned from those early conversations is there's already some great partnerships already out there that are already working on these issues. So how do we just make sure that we can bring the tourism industry to the table and complement those efforts as opposed to trying to create something that's going to compete with that as well? We also learned about the industries ready to go. We talked to tour operators and the private sector and destinations, and the Care for Colorado Coalition is a perfect example where I think there were 140 now partners that have signed up that said, yes, we care about this issue of destination stewardship. We want to help. What can we do? And so there's a great opportunity to turn this coalition into more than just a learning, but also getting them to become actors in supporting this effort as well. So that's kind of where we are. Again, we're still listening, we're still learning, we're still hearing some of the issues. Those workshops are helping us dive into some of the specific solutions to some of these challenges. But now what we want to do is share with you kind of the early stage of where we are with the strategy framework. What we're going to do with the process is we're actually going to release the draft framework, this table of contents, and the glossary of terms. We're going to do that before we develop the whole strategy. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to make sure that we've covered everything and that some of the ideas that are being proposed make sense and that we're not missing anything. So this is a sneak peek of this framework here. We're still going to finish up our workshops and finish up our interviews, and then we'll also get your feedback here today to help polish this and also go a little bit deeper when we do release this as well. But what we want to do is start with an introduction. We want to make sure we give it a summary. We have the glossary of terms. We want to make sure we can answer the question, who is this plan for? A lot of people are asking that. Is this for CTO? Is it for the destination organizations? Is it for our land managers? And the answer to that is it's kind of for everyone. That's our goal here, is that different people will see how they can use this plan in order to support their efforts. Whether you're an individual business and you want to support stewardship, or you're a destination organization, or you're another department that is going to work with the industry. So we want to make sure that's clear. We also want to set the context. So really, again, using this opportunity to talk about the importance of tourism, why destination stewardship is important as well, remind some of these priorities that have come up, and then how we're aligning with existing plans that are out there. There's a lot of plans in the state. That's fantastic. There's a lot of overlap. We've got other plans that are tackling things like climate and outdoor recreation and culture and the arts. How do we show alignment to those plans as well? Then our next section, we're going to move into kind of the vision for the strategy. Where are we trying to get to? What does success look like? So this is where we really work on that shared vision statement of looking into the future. Where do we want Colorado tourism industry to be, and what does that relationship look like with stewardship? So that's our vision statement. We'll also highlight these guiding principles that CTO has been using under destination stewardship to really show how the plan will kind of be driven by these three kind of principles. And then finally, in this section, we want to target our indicators and targets. We want to make sure that we're measuring success. What indicators are we using? Where are we getting that data from? What are our targets for these indicators? And how are we going to go about collecting that and reporting against that to show progress towards that vision? Now, in terms of organization of the plan, this is where we sat down and kind of thought about how best to do this. And we've decided to focus on two key focus areas. The first is focused on the idea of shared stewardship of tourism resources. So if we think about this, this is the idea that there are tourism resources that our industry relies on, and there are different actors that are working towards protecting and stewarding those resources. How do we align those efforts and identify the role of the tourism industry to support those? So that's the first part of the plan. The second part of the plan is going to be then looking at more of what can CTO and what can the destination organizations do to help provide industry leadership, to provide and support this transition from just marketing to also supporting management and stewardship. So that's how we've divided the plan. And when we think about our resources, the area that we're thinking about, first and foremost is our communities. We know that the communities are the backbone of our tourism industry. That's what makes our places unique and special. So how do we minimize the negative impacts and maximize the benefits to our communities? And what do those things need to be? Whether it's looking at light pollution and looking at ways that we can pursue dark skies, or looking at things like this traffic congestion and different solutions with that as well. Nature and recreation, of course, plays a very important role. That's what we all think about with this. Again, there's some great work already being done, but there's more work that can be done to support the protection of our natural and recreation areas. We pulled wildlife out. Originally, this was under nature, but we heard from so many people how important this was and so how some of the challenges are so unique in terms of wildlife viewing and what visitors are doing around this and how we can really help support wildlife management and not only in visitor behavior, but also as the tourism industry advocates for new trails and new product, how do we make sure that we're taking into consideration wildlife corridors and habitat as well? Cultural heritage is an area where I think, again, if we look at the state and we look at its competitive advantage, I think this is one of those ones that, isn't maybe not necessarily top of mind when people are booking a trip to Colorado, but once they get here and they learn about the history, they learn about the heritage, they learn about some of the different resources here, it creates a really unique experience. So there's a great opportunity here to protect those and help make sure that more and more visitors experience this as well. The arts and the creative industries is another area. We see places like Red Rocks and music at our breweries and public art and in towns and murals. So how do we bring that creative arts, the creative industries and the arts closer to tourism, and how do we help support the stewardship of those as well? And then the industry itself. This is the businesses, this is Main Street, this is looking at helping entrepreneurs get started. How do we make sure that when visitors come to our communities for recreation, that they're actually spending money and they're spending money in the communities? So what needs to be done to strengthen that effort? And also related to this is supporting the destination organizations as well. We know how important the destination organizations are to making tourism work in our communities and finding this right balance. But we also know that some communities are challenged with resources to support that effort. And we also know that, the new legislation and such is also even threatening some of the funding models that are being used to support these organizations. So how do we help steward those? Transportation, we've pulled out as a separate area. Again, looking at how do we strengthen the use of public transportation, how do we encourage everything like EV rentals and showcasing EV charging stations across the state. But again, looking at ways in which we can support the scenic byways. The workforce itself, not only related to things like housing that I mentioned earlier, but also just upskilling the staff and making sure that folks have an opportunity to grow in this industry. And then finally is climate. And sorry, that one doesn't come out so well, but climate is also very important. We all know that climate change is real. It's impacting our tourism economy. So what are we doing to adapt? What can we do to support mitigation around this as well? So these are the 9 tourism resources. Again, as I mentioned, there are a lot of people across the state working on these issues. So how can we plug into it? How can the tourism industry support these efforts? And that's been our workshop conversation. It's been very much focused on this and trying to get solutions and recommendations for these areas. So that's kind of where we are with the first part. But then this, and just to summarize on this one, what we're going to do for each one of these areas is have a summary of the resource, a high-level goal statement that kind of is an aspirational, what we're trying to do with the resource, and then again, what indicators are we going to use to measure whether or not we're in fact reaching and pursuing that goal, and then most importantly is these strategies. What specifically are we going to be doing? So when we talk about wildlife, what specifically strategies are going to put in the plan? What resources are required? Who's going to work on this? Who's going to lead it? Who's going to be the partner? How do we identify and align efforts to that? And so that's always, for me, one of the most important parts of strategic planning. It's great to have a vision and have high-level goals and objectives, but ultimately, what's going to get done? What's different and going to change as a result of the plan? Now, the second part, and this is really where we want to kind of tap into your expertise in the room here today, is to really start diving into, well, what should change or what should be enhanced with the role of CTO and also our destination organization partners when we talk about industry leadership when it comes to destination stewardship. CTO is one of the first in the entire country to have a destination stewardship department. They'll be the first to roll out a statewide destination stewardship plan. They've done a lot of work already around this with Do Colorado Right and others as well, the Care for Colorado Coalition. But there's more that could be done. So when I've talked to destinations, I always ask the question, what would you like to see? What would you like to see at a state level that could help you with your stewardship journey in your own community? And so really thinking about this question of looking at the roles of whether it's CTO or our destination partners in planning and implementation. That's something that's always important. Every destination needs to have a plan. How do we align those plans and make sure that there's alignment between the state and counties and regions with tourism? How do we support destination development? The team in the destination development team at CTO has been doing some great work. I've had a chance to work with them on the Restart and Reimagine, bringing communities together, figuring out what their priorities are, helping them move those initiatives forward to improve tourism in those communities. What else can be done? What else is needed to be done that will support destination stewardship? The marketing, of course, most of our organizations, CTO and our destination organizations, this is the main focus, is marketing. But again, what can we do in the marketing space that will help support stewardship efforts as well? Research and intelligence, whether it be knowing who's coming, how much they're spending, how long they're in the destination, but also understanding maybe their satisfaction with the visit. We're talking about some of the places and opportunities for surveying visitors about their experience at a recreation site. Was it too crowded? Did they see trash? What information can we help collect, or can we grab from, CTO has been pioneering some stuff with geo-targeting, fencing as well to get information. So that's another one. And then also visitor services. We've got visitor centers that CTO runs, destinations run, Forest Service runs. What's the role of these visitor centers and the information that's available at those visitor centers to help support stewardship efforts? Now we have some different programs that have been put in place, like the Inclusivity and Travel Coalition, the Care for Colorado Coalition, the visitor. These are initiatives that CTO has rolled out. They've created, brought people together. But what can we do now with these coalitions to better support stewardship? And then visitor behavior. We heard from so many people that visitors are often the problem. So how can we not only better educate them, but this concept of behavior optimization. How can we nudge them? How can we incentivize them to do the right thing? So when you think about the leave your towel hung up instead of having it washed, you know, there's different studies that have shown that just the language that you use on that can be the difference on whether or not someone participates in that program. So how do we learn from this and look at things like gamification as a way to encourage visitors to do the right thing? And then, of course, building on things like this, the GovCon and other efforts that CTO does with learning and networking. Again, how can we build on these programs in order to support the stewardship goals? And finally, the grants and programs. We have grants and programs that are available for marketing, for destination development, but we've also learned from other agencies that they have their own programs. And some of those programs might be something that could be helpful for supporting this destination stewardship effort. So this is where we're going to now ask for your input. We've got our different facilitators around the room, and what we're going to do is have each table basically just help us think through some of these questions. First, we're going to start off with just kind of a little icebreaker just to introduce yourself. What is destination stewardship success? What is it? How do you define it? What, in your own words, how would you know when destination stewardship is successful? And then secondly, I want to focus on that second part, that area that CTO and destination organizations work on. What are the things that you think need to be, new things that could be added, new programs? Are there tools that could be developed at a state level that would help you in your community in order to support destination stewardship? So before we go into that, I'll just go ahead and open up to see if anyone has any questions about the overall initiative, or about what we're going to ask you here to do today. All right, so no questions, no problem. So yeah, so what we'll do now is just go ahead and have each table, I think we've got for the most part someone from each, from our team here, and if we don't, we'll bring you over, ask you to come on over. And again, what we've got is just to really have a conversation here about this question again. And I always finish my interviews with this question. What would you like to see differently? What would you like to see from CTO that will help support your destination stewardship journey, whether you're a destination organization or you're a private business? What would you like to see that would help support that effort? So that's really the question that we want to focus in on, and hopefully we can get some good ideas from you guys so that we can get this into the plan. Okay? We have 30 minutes? Yes, we have about 30 minutes. Thanks. Can you put the slide up? Sorry, what's that? The slide? Yeah. There you go, perfect. Sure, yeah, that'd be great.